My guest tonight is certainly familiar to television viewers as well as theater goers. You might recall him as television detective Mike Hammer from series in the 1980s and 1990s. More recently, he's been playing the prison warden on the show Prison Break on Fox. But he's playing an even more familiar character on stage right now at the Aronoff Center. I'm pleased to welcome celebrated stage and screen actor Stacy Keach to Around Cincinnati. Stacy.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here in Cincinnati.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
You've been on Broadway a lot. I know you were in the original production of Arthur Coppett's Indians, and you were in Ira Levine's Death Trap, so you've done a lot of that sort of thing. You've made dozens of films. I mean, too numerous to mention, but Long Riders and American History X, and a couple of films with Cheech and Chong, too.
Yeah,
so quite a long career there. But now you're in this touring production of Frost Nixon, playing President Richard M. Nixon. So thanks for coming by. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Peter Morgan's play originated in London, and then it moved to Broadway, where it picked up a lot of accolades, including some Tony nominations and all of that sort of thing, as the best play of 2007. Now it's a movie, it's touring. What do you think is so compelling about this story, and also particularly about Peter Morgan's script?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. Peter Morgan, I think, first of all, is a wonderful political portrait artist. I think his depiction of Queen Elizabeth and Queen and Idi Amin and Last King of Scotland were extraordinary character studies. And I don't know, I've never met Peter, but I'd be fascinated to ask him what compelled him to become so fascinated with Richard Nixon. Because I think in many ways what he does with his interpretation in many ways rehabilitates Nixon's image probably more than the original Frost Nixon ever did themselves. I think that he has a very sympathetic approach to Nixon's character in one respect. I found he imbues him with humor. He has a very self-deprecating sort of objective perspective on himself in terms of his self-consciousness, his humanity comes through, I think, you know. And
did playing the role change your opinions?
It did. It really did. I find myself much more sympathetic toward him than I did prior to that. I mean, going back to the Watergate days that we both lived through. I mean, that was he was not the most favored person in the household that particular time.
Well, we certainly demonized him in many ways, and perhaps his conduct brought that on, but there was certainly more depth to the character there, and this play obviously brings that forward.
I also think that the situation in America for the last 8 years has made Nixon look very good by comparison.
Have you seen the movie?
I have not, but I keep it keeps finding me, or snatches of it, because if I leave the news on and I wake up in the morning, there's a commercial for the movie that comes on. And Frank is he's a dear old friend of mine.
That would be Frank Langella, who's played that role on screen and originated it on stage.
That's exactly right. And initially, I was very kind of reluctant to I didn't want to walk in his shadow or in his shoes, and I spoke with my wife about it. She said, "You know, you're a classical actor. You play lots of Shakespearean roles. Many actors have played Hamlet, Lear, Richard III, and Anthony Hopkins and Rip Torn were wonderful Nixons. And my good friend Edward Jarrow in Washington, D.C., who played it in a two-hander, Nixon's Nixon, which is just Nixon and Kissinger.
Which actually originated here at the Cincinnati Playhouse.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was the first productions of that happened here.
Yeah. So he's become, he's become a character he's up for interpretation.
Absolutely. So you don't have any real sense as to how different the role is on screen versus
the way Frank did it on the way he did it on stage. No, I don't.